The elite private boys' school, Geelong Grammar, is planning to build a high-speed monorail to ferry passengers from its helipad to the school quadrangle. At a cost of $70 million, the Thomas Evelyn Bostock Skyrail eclipses the $55 million outlaid by the King's School in Sydney last year for its George IV Aquarium project, which is believed to be the first underground aquarium, entirely solar-powered, and restaurant complex in the Southern Hemisphere. Meanwhile, in the public school system, secondary students at Gunya Park High School west of Dubbo, they have been on a project of their own. They've been signed up for a test program to pick fruit in the afternoons in order to fund the new air conditioner for their classroom. Okay, there's no helipad, there's no monorail, there's no aquarium, but you get the picture. You believed it, didn't you? We published a Follow the Money piece on the website about private school government subsidies, and it's worth a read. We spoke to both sides, the advocates for the public system, the advocates for the private system, worked out where a few of the lurks were. There is inequality in the system, although there is also plenty of misconception. The ostentatious building projects of the elite private schools, often publicised in the media, are not funded by the government. They're funded by the old boys network of the schools. They are privately funded. However, the governments, state and federal, do, and check the story on this, fund elite schools on a per-student basis. The question is, these schools are so rich, many of them, should the government be funding private schools at all? The numbers show a funding skew over the past 9 or 10 years in favour of private schools, thanks to coalition favouring privatisation. And although discussions are afoot now, it appears that the Labor government is doing little to reverse that. But this should all be up for debate, thanks to this kind of press, which has bobbed up in recent weeks. A study by the unions found that 5 elite private schools in New South Wales and Victoria spent more on new facilities in 2021 than half of the nation's public schools. The report found that 5 private schools spent $175.6 million in 2021 compared to a spend of $174.4 million at the 3,372 public schools. That's 5 private schools spending versus 3,372 public schools. Stories go on to say that the elite school Cranbrook spent more on new buildings, $63.5 million, in 1 year than the entire capital works spend in Victoria and Tasmania combined, which was $62.4 million. Now, the figures here are being cherry-picked to make a point. It all depends on the timing of various projects and so on. You can find the exact information on the excellent My Schools website about the capital works of all the schools, public and private. You can find per-student subsidies and subsidies state and federal broken down, but the guts of it is that state and federal payments to the richer schools tend to be around $4 or $5 grand per student versus 15 to 20 grand per student in the state system. Now, the rationale for funding the private system is that new schools pop up to service new outer suburbs as cities grow. And these do get money sometimes for public works, and they also get a higher per student payment. It's something akin to privatisation by stealth, because the private sector gets there to the new suburb and the new site, say a church school, before the public makes the move. And governments subsidise it as it's cheaper than building a new school. And it provides competition. That's the philosophical standpoint. Now, we are stuck with the system we've got. They're not going to undergo any major reforms. They could, if we were starting from scratch, be like Germany, where there are no private schools and education outcomes are better. Or could be like the UK, where the independent schools are entirely outside the education system and they get no funding. In Australia, we have a hybrid system. And there is competition, but there are also public subsidies for private schools. It should be said that the government subsidies are means tested, however. So the richer the parents, the less the per student payment. But the inequity lies also in the tax deductions available for building projects that enable these things, like the $29 million library being built in Scots College in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. Now, these are tax-free. these building funds. But if you're a poor parent at a poor school in the country who needs a new classroom, yes, you will get a tax deduction too. For the labourer from the outer suburbs asked to chip in for a classroom at the local public school, the same tax deduction is available. But as is the case with all the lurks, from negative gearing to franking credits to CGT relief and so forth, some 90% of the benefits of these lurks go to the wealthiest 10% of people, which is unfair because it's in the manner of a cross-subsidy. Now, all of this brings us to the point of this story that the wealth of the elite schools is a symptom, we believe, of government and inequality in Australia, not the cause. There's an element of chicken and egg in this, but the lavish spending in the private system on building projects, on vanity projects, is symptomatic of rising inequality and, of course, bankrolled by these tax lurks. So it's not so much the cause as the effect. And the government, of course, fearing backlash for any minute reform, is unlikely to tackle these things in any serious way soon. So we have the system we're stuck with. Thanks for your support. Please like, share, comment in the space below.